Ladies and gentlemen, if you take your seats, we're going to begin in 90 seconds. This is the fourth plenary of a very extended day, but it's on the very vital subject of collective approaches to current security issues. And I remember some 22 hours ago saying that this last year had been characterized by a lot of freelance diplomacy and a great deal of individualist approaches to the security problems of the region, and there's a general understanding that only properly arrived at collective approaches can help. An important core animator of such a collective approach in this region necessarily needs to be the Gulf Cooperation Council, and it's a matter of public record that there have been numerous differences of view amongst key members of the Gulf Cooperation Council and amongst members of the Gulf Cooperation Council and other allies of the region. There has been an extraordinary amount of intramural diplomacy taking place only in the last few weeks within the Gulf Cooperation Council in order to restore that sense of unity and sense of purpose that the GCC has always wished for itself and is necessary in order to promote a united face towards the rest of the region and the world. And as we all know, there is a GCC Head of State Summit meeting that will be hosted in Doha, the capital of Qatar, on Tuesday. And so it's quite right that the first speaker in this session, who I'll introduce in a moment, is Dr. Abdul Latif Al-Zayani. I knew him also as General Abdul Latif Al-Zayani when he played a very important role here in the Kingdom of Bahrain, his country of birth and nationality, in the Ministry of Interior, a person who understood all the nuances of community policing and has brought a very subtle understanding of the broad issues of security to his current important post as Secretary General of the GCC. Second to speak on this plenary will be John Baird, who makes his second successive appearance at the Manama Dialogue, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, a really great friend of this region. I can think of possibly only one other foreign minister in the last couple of years whose tweets I follow and who every week it seems to be in a different continent, let alone a different country. John Baird has given Canadian foreign policy that extrovert disposition that is so important in diplomacy, and has shown that in particular towards this region. Our third speaker will be the UK Secretary of State for Defence, Michael Fallon. Don't overinterpret the fact that he's not yet here. He's completing a bilateral with His Majesty, the King of Bahrain, but I'm assured that he will shortly be here, and I didn't want to delay proceedings too much. So with that preface, could I invite the Secretary General of the GCC to take the floor? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Actually, we've just completed here in Bahrain an election, actually an outstanding election. And therefore, I think I have to abide by the rule of majority. I noticed that the Arabic-speaking community is much larger. So with all respect, Dr. Chipman, if you would allow me to speak in Arabic. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسرني أن أتقدم بخالص الشكر والتقدير إلى الدكتور جون تشيبمان وإلى إدارة المعهد الدولي للدراسات الاستراتيجية على الدعوة الكريمة لي للمشاركة في الدورة العاشرة لحوار المنامة. هذا المؤتمر السنوي الذي تزداد أهميته في كل عام، واستطاع كما اعتدنا أن يستقطب على مدار السنوات الماضية نخبة من كبار الشخصيات السياسية والأكاديمية والعسكرية المؤثرة وغيرهم من المختصين الذين أثروا مناقشاته برؤاهم النيرة وأفكارهم القيمة. إن موضوع هذه الجلسة هو تطوير نهج جماعي تجاه القضايا الأمنية، واسمحوا لي أضيف كلمة الاستراتيجية الحالية. وأود بداية أن أطرح سؤالاً محدد، وهو كيف يمكن تطوير هذا النهج الجماعي المنشود؟ في اعتقادي أن تطوير نهج جماعي هادف وفعال لأي مسألة أمنية استراتيجية أمر مهم، وهو يستلزم في المقام الأول والأهم إشراك الأطراف المعنية الأكثر تأثيراً في تلك المسألة الخاصة. ومن الناحية المثالية، أكرر، من الناحية المثالية سوف تركز تلك الأطراف على هدف مشترك ورؤية متفق عليها وصولاً إلى النجاح المنشود. وأقول من الناحية المثالية لأن تعدد الأطراف المشاركة عند مواجهة تحد ما لا يمكن أن يجعلهم في حالة انسجام تام، حيث من الصعب من حيث المبدأ الاتفاق على تحديد ماهية التحدي. فالبعض قد يعتبر تحدياً ما خطراً، فيما يراه البعض الآخر مسألة يترتب عليها بعض العواقب البسيطة، فيما يرى آخرون أن هناك فرصاً يمكن استغلالها أو مزايا يمكن الاستفادة منها، ولكن سوف يظل لكل الأطراف تأثيراً على المخرجات أو النتائج. ما أود قوله هو أن هذا التأثير يقضي بأن تكون المشاركة شمولية، ما أمكن. فعبارة جماعي تعني أن كافة الآراء متساوية في الأهمية، حتى تلك التي قد نختلف معها، وأنه ينبغي عدم استبعاد أي طرف من الأطراف، كما ينبغي أن تبقى الأبواب مفتوحة دوماً للقادمين الجدد أو للذين يصلون متأخرين. أما المسألة الثانية فهي أن هذا النهج الجماعي بالإضافة إلى ضرورة أن يكون شمولياً، فينبغي أن يكون مدعوماً بالتشاور بين الأطراف المعنية وتوقع العواقب. ولسوء الحظ وكما تعلمون فإن بعض الدول التي من حولنا واجهت صعوبات كبيرة لأنها لم تدرس على نحو تام العواقب المحتملة قبل اتخاذ القرار المناسب بشأن العمل الواجب عليها اتخاذه. إذن يجب علينا أن نفكر بعمق وأن نتشاور ملياً قبل الإقدام على اتخاذ أي قرار أو القيام بأي عمل. ويجب علينا قبل أي شيء أن نجري تقييماً شاملاً للعواقب المحتملة للحدث. أن التشاور الموسع والتفكير على المدى البعيد سيؤديان إلى تحقيق النجاح المنشود. وبهذا القول فإنني أقدر الصعوبات التي تنطوي على ذلك، خاصة عند وجود مصالح وضغوطات داخلية على المدى القريب. أما المسألة التالية التي أريد أن أطرحها عليكم فهي كيف نتأكد من تنفيذ الاستراتيجية بشكل صحيح. ولنأخذ على سبيل المثال أحد التحديات العالمية الرئيسية التي انبثقت مع الأسف من هذه المنطقة، وهو خطر التطرف الذي أصبح ضرورة جلياً اليوم نظراً لوجود أعداد كبيرة من الشباب من مختلف دول العالم قد انخرطوا في دائرة العنف والإرهاب والتطرف. ومن المهم دراسة هذه الظاهرة في سياق مضمونها المستقبلي، ومن المهم كذلك أكثر من ذي قبل أن يكون ردنا الدولي جماعياً ومنسقاً من خلال الربط بين الاستراتيجيات الإقليمية والدولية، كما أنه من المهم أيضاً أن نقوم اليوم بإعداد استراتيجية شاملة من أجل المستقبل. أعود مرة أخرى لأطرح سؤالاً آخر في هذا السياق، وهو: هل وضعنا الآلية اللازمة للتنفيذ؟ أعتقد جزاماً أن ذلك لم يحدث، لأننا جميعاً منشغلون بمواجهة التهديدات الآنية كل على طريقته. ولكن لا يخفى عليكم أنه منذ 10 سنوات كانت المملكة العربية السعودية تنظر إلى المستقبل، فاقترحت إنشاء مركز دولي لمكافحة الإرهاب ليكون بمثابة نقطة اتصال عالمية لدراسة وتنسيق استراتيجيات مكافحة الإرهاب على المستوى الدولي. ومع أنه لم يتم تفعيل هذا المقترح البناء، إلا أن المملكة واصلت جهودها الداعمة لإنشاء هذا المركز إيماناً منها بأهميته، وقدمت مؤخراً دعماً مالياً قدره 100 مليون دولار أمريكي لهذا الغرض. إن هذا المركز المقترح سوف يسهل تنسيق الأمن الدولي الحالي بطريقة منتظمة، وهذا سوف يتطلب تعاوناً وتنسيقاً دائمين، مما سوف يؤدي في نهاية المطاف إلى تعزيز الثقة بين الأصدقاء والحلفاء. كما يمكن أن يكون هذا المركز بمثابة منتدى فكري يستقطب المفكرين والباحثين والمعنيين في جميع المجالات السياسية والاجتماعية والاقتصادية والأمنية من أجل مكافحة التطرف على مستوى عالمي، فضلاً عن أن هذا المركز يمكن أن يكون مستقبلاً جسراً يربط بين الاستراتيجيات الحالية والبعيدة الأمد. سيدات والسادة الكرام، لقد تناولت هذا الموضوع بصورة مبدئية دون الخوض في التفاصيل، إلا أنه بالإشارة إلى أننا من خلال وضع نهج جماعي سوف نكون شموليين ونشارك كافة الأطراف وننظر إلى الأمور على المدى البعيد مع مراعاة العواقب المحتملة ووضع الآليات اللازمة للتنفيذ. وفي اعتقادي أن المبادرة الخليجية لتسوية الأزمة اليمنية قد اشتملت على معظم أو ربما كافة هذه المسائل، ومع ذلك وبالرغم من كل الدعم الذي تلقاه اليمن من المجتمع الإقليمي والدولي، فإن هذا البلد الشقيق أصبح على حافة كارثة وشيكة بسبب التأثير الخارجي والمصالح الخاصة لبعض الأطراف المؤثرة في الأزمة. وربما كان ما حدث في اليمن متوقعاً، وربما العكس، وربما لم نتبين الصورة كاملة، وربما العكس، إلا أن كل ما أود قوله بالإضافة إلى كل ما ذكرت هو أن تنفيذ أي استراتيجية يجب أن يتضمن متابعة مستمرة ووثيقة والاستعداد للتعامل مع المتغيرات دون أن نغفل عن الهدف المنشود، وهو أمن واستقرار وازدهار المنطقة وإنسانها. أشكركم على حسن الاستماع، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Dr. General Zayani, thank you very much indeed for those remarks. There'll be a number of issues I know the delegates will want to pick up with you in the Q&A. Could I next invite Foreign Minister of Canada, John Baird, to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, John. I'm very thrilled to be here at the Manama Dialogue. Once again, I want to thank IISS. I'm so glad we're using the name DASH now because I didn't want to tell people I was going to an ISIS conference. I want to thank you, but especially thank the Kingdom of Bahrain, His Majesty, His Royal Highness, and of course, our good friend Sheikh Khalid. I thought the speech last night by the Crown Prince was extraordinary. It was clear, it was concise, he had a very solid message, and most importantly, he didn't drone on for too long. I told the Crown Prince afterwards he would have no future as a Western politician. The theme of collective approaches to collective security is a very relevant and timely topic. Just this week, I had the chance to meet with other Euro-Atlantic colleagues together at NATO. We had a meeting of the Global Coalition to counter Daesh. We also met with Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah to get an update on the situation in Afghanistan, and then we had OSCE ministerial meetings in Basel, Switzerland. So it's been a very busy week, but there will be no prizes for guessing what the main topics of our conversations were throughout the week. The Russian Federation is dangerously undermining regional and global security with its violent incursions into Ukraine. This demands a global and a robust response. And then, closer to home, closer to where we are today, we have the advance of Daesh. We've already discussed the threat posed by this barbaric terrorist group, and we will discuss it more. I want to reflect a little on the broader problem, though, that I believe it represents. It strikes me that most of the challenges in this region are driven by the opposite of collective, collaborative approaches. And should I say wholeheartedly, I agree with His Royal Highness who said yesterday, this is more of a theocratic, neo-fascist type phenomenon we're dealing with. Sectarianism and its dangerous rise in the Middle East comes in many forms. We have a Shia-Sunni divide, we have threats to the Kurds, threats to the ancient Iraqi Christian community, and the list goes on. The antidote to sectarianism and the key ingredient to lasting stability, in my judgment, is pluralism. And that is under siege as well. What is common in all of these divides is that they are being exploited to achieve regional and geopolitical ends with immense human costs. They are exploited by some sinister state actors who meddle in the state affairs of others for their own gain, as is too often the case with the state of Iran. Sectarianism is also exploited and emboldened by nefarious non-state actors, actors that wreak havoc across ungoverned expanses. We see this with Daesh, which has extended this divide across international borders, and we see it in some other militias as well. Commander Soleimani of Iran's Al-Quds Force has been organizing Shia militias in Iraq since before 2010 and is happy to publicize that fact with selfies in social media. An agent of terror styling himself as a hero. Daesh is clearly the very real and current sectarian threat that we are facing here. But we cannot lose sight of the potential for those sectarian Shia militias to rival it. Of course, the threat to sectarianism not only transcends the borders within the region, it transcends those between this region and others. That's why Canada has made the Middle East a top foreign policy priority and why I take every opportunity to visit the Gulf and the wider region. If you look at a two-dimensional map, maybe that doesn't make much sense, but if you could somehow visualize the live geolocation of all the tweets, the financial transactions, the energy exports, the flight paths, suddenly the globe looks much, much smaller. And so what happens in the Middle East reverberates across the globe. A couple of months ago, the Halifax Security Forum commissioned a poll in dozens of countries. It found that a clear majority of people believed that the world is a more dangerous place now than it was just a year ago. Even 82% of those asked in Canada agreed with that. And that was before the two terrorist-inspired attacks against soldiers on our own soil and in the halls of our nation's parliament. At the same time as the world gets smaller, and to some extent, because of it, the world also feels more dangerous. The urgency of collective action couldn't be higher. These threats are common to all of us, and I believe we must tackle them together based on common principles. I'm proud that Canada is standing shoulder to shoulder with many others in the fight against extremism, terrorism, and sectarianism. When I was in the UAE last month, I reflected that in the wars of my adult lifetime, we have been allies in every single conflict, some 6. We are fighting Daesh not just through military support, but by working with regional partners like our hosts here in Bahrain to stem the flow of terrorist financing and, just as importantly, foreign fighters. We know that our security and our prosperity are intrinsically connected to the security and prosperity of others in the region and around the world. The most effective response to a threat is not just to build bigger walls, but to get out there and work on reducing the threat itself. The same is true of our economies. Canada is very blessed by geography and its resources. But we know that true long-term strength comes from being a networked, outward-facing, free-trading nation. Countries that empower their people with opportunities, that see them as citizens rather than just subjects, will benefit from the dynamism of prosperity that is unleashed. In this region, the discovery of black gold fueled a boom of infrastructure and economic development. At the same time, Soviet philosophy found influence among some political movements. But long-term prosperity in these insecure times will require a shift of thinking, from the distribution of capital to the creation of it, just as pluralism is the antidote to sectarianism in the social sphere. Greater diversity in the economic sphere is a strength, not a weakness. We have seen how the rise of Daesh earlier this year contributed to volatility in energy markets. Despite recent falls in oil prices, the IEA has warned in its World Energy Outlook that we should all be aware of supply complacency. That means not allowing a short-term picture of a well-supplied oil market to obscure future energy demand challenges, and an over-reliance on a relatively small number of producers. In other words, it's not easy to keep balance in an increasingly unstable world if you're only standing on one foot. I began by talking about the need for a collective approach to the security challenge posed by Daesh and also by the Russian Federation. As I conclude, let me reaffirm that we can't tackle the long-term threat posed by extremism and sectarianism with military might alone. And you cannot fight sectarianism with sectarianism any more than you can fight fire with fire. In our hyper-connected world where information and perceptions flow rapidly, the battlefield is increasingly in the mind. We all have to do much more to counter poisonous narratives, the narratives that say sectarianism and nationalism are the only ways for our citizens to be and to feel secure. Our narrative is that we can achieve in a more secure, stable world by working together to fight terror, to fight a neo-fascist theology, wherever or however it emerges. A world where trade and economic prosperity are the surest path to a better and brighter future, where freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law are protected. And I look forward to discussing further how we can make this happen in this forum and beyond. Thank you very much.
John, thank you very much for a very clear, crisp set of assertions and for the support for obviously a collective approach to these difficult issues. It really is a great pleasure for me now to introduce Michael Fallon, the Secretary of State for Defence in the United Kingdom. He was previously Secretary of State for Energy. He's one of the longest-serving Conservative politicians in the country. He 25 years ago was also in government. I think you were the junior minister in Margaret Thatcher's time in government. So he's a person of extraordinary experience and has gripped the Secretary of State Defence role for the United Kingdom in the last few months at a time of extraordinary exertions for the UK military, both in the field and in terms of its own wider defence diplomacy. So, Michael Fallon, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, John, and my apologies to Dr. Zani for missing the first few minutes of his speech. This year, the dialogue celebrates its 10th anniversaries, an anniversary in a year of anniversaries that includes the centenary of the outbreak of the First World War and 70 years since the D-Day landings. It was Winston Churchill who said, study history, study history. In history lies all the secrets of statecraft. So as we contemplate the future, the rise of Daesh, Russian aggression in Eastern Europe, the machinations of Iran, the spread of Ebola, we are bound to ask what lessons history contains for us. Complexity has, as John has already said, has replaced some of the old Cold War certainties. We see weapons proliferation, non-state actors peddling an expansionist global ideology, rogue states and ungoverned spaces, and a resurgent Russian Federation. The boundaries between international and domestic threats, military and non-military affairs, are blurry. And those dangers, combined with the willingness of aggressors to rip up the conventional rule books, make our present situation dangerous in an unprecedented degree. It is the concurrent nature of all these threats that seems now to be the new normal. And these are threats not just to our individual national security, but to the international stability on which our trade, our resources, our technologies depend, threats to the world order itself. And I know how essential stability is to economic progress and the advance of democracy here in the Gulf and here in Bahrain. Our appreciation of the value of international stability demands that we think harder about how it can be guaranteed in future. Just 12 months ago, some suggested that Britain was entering a new era of contingency post-Afghanistan, that our parliamentary vote last year not to launch airstrikes against a Syrian regime deploying chemical weapons marked a more cautious approach to the use of hard power, that the United Kingdom would defend only on the goal line, hoping danger would somehow pass us by. Well, they were wrong. That is not the British way. It wasn't in the Falklands. It wasn't in Kuwait. The evidence points the other way and suggests that far from entering an era in which Britain's armed forces will be used sparingly, we are well into an age of greater uncertainty. Our Strategic Defence and Security Review in 2010 concluded that we should assume a proactive role in defending our global rules-based system. And everything that has happened since has, in my view, reinforced that view. And I cannot see it changing in the successor review we will be launching next year. But achieving that ambition does mean learning at least two lessons from history. First, liberty is underpinned by armed forces that are credible. They are our deterrent. Forces that are not just well-equipped and well-trained, but are ready to deploy rapidly and at scale. Being capable is not enough. Our friends and our enemies alike must know that we individually have the political will to act and to use all the forces at our disposal. And there should be no doubt that Britain does and Britain will. Our Parliament voted overwhelmingly this autumn to launch airstrikes against Daesh in Iraq. Public opinion strongly supported that position. We can act and we will act where we need to, just as our friends in the Gulf have done. And we will use whichever of our forces are most appropriate. Against Daesh, we're contributing fast jets and surveillance aircraft. We're providing training, equipment, and staff liaison officers. Now, we are not providing UK combat boots on the ground. Why not? The lesson from our experience in Afghanistan and elsewhere is that defeating insurgencies, of course, requires boots on the ground. But the best approach are local forces that are inclusive and enjoy popular support. That is why we are hard at work supporting the Iraqi government's rebuilding of their security forces, their development of a national guard, and the vital efforts at political reconciliation between Sunni, Shia, and Kurd. In securing stability in Iraq, in restoring its territorial integrity, I am clear that Iraqi boots must lead. But that does not mean we rule out British boots on the ground in other situations where we need to defend our interests and to assist our allies. The second lesson from history, implicit in the title of today's session, is the importance of partnerships. The most modern conflicts have been defined by great coalitions, and the complex nature of our challenges today mean that no nation can afford to go it alone. Our Afghan experience of 48 nations working together provides a model for the future. Partnerships now underpin our anti-Daesh coalition, helping to cut off its funding to stop extremists crossing the border, degrading its capability, and discrediting its poisonous ideology. And the Kuwait conference held in October showed that there is unity in this region and amongst countries as far apart as Norway and Australia to tackle that violent extremism. We need to grasp that opportunity, as the Crown Prince told us last night, to counter the extremist narrative and all those who propagate it. As well as combat boots, we need combat diplomacy, combat communications. When it comes to partnerships, in the United Kingdom, we start from a strong base. We have many friends, particularly here in the Gulf. Soon we will be marking 200 years of friendship with Bahrain. Yet all friendships have room to grow. Our relationships with our Gulf allies are no different. Since that decision to withdraw our permanent presence in the Gulf over 40 years ago, we have often appeared driven by short-term imperatives. Our commitment was described to me as a single year's engagement 40 times over. In my view, old friends deserve better, and that's why today engagement lies at the heart of our strategy. We can already point to strong collaborations, the Gulf Initiative, UK-UAE Task Force, our Defence Cooperation Accords, and Cougar 14, where we deployed our Naval Task Group. The arrangement we signed here last night goes further, not just in expanding our Bahraini footprint, but in considering our defence presence across Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait as a strategic whole, thinking decades, not years ahead. That will be a key part of our refreshed Gulf strategy. So as we look towards 2050, I see more uncertainty, more competition and confrontation on the horizon. And in that world, there is, of course, a role for soft power, and indeed for the smart power that Joe Nye advocated. But there is no substitute in the end for hard power, and that is something the UK will not forget. So we will not look to act alone. International challenges that we face require international solutions, and the benefits of cooperation extend beyond improved security and increased international stability. Over the past 40 years, our allies here in the Gulf have conjured economic miracles out of their natural resources. So the history of this region has a third lesson for all of us. When you succeed here in the Gulf, we all succeed. The more you are secure, the more we in the West will be secure too. Thank you.
Michael Fallon, thank you very much for that presentation. And I know everyone in this region will have heard carefully your statement that a key part of the revised Gulf strategy is a defense presence across all of the GCC as a strategic actor for decades, not just years ahead. And that is certainly a clear definition of a commitment. You've heard from all three speakers a celebration of the idea of a collective approach to collective problems. Perhaps I might just inspire a note of skepticism in order to ensure that we have an active debate, and invite you to think of three propositions. One, are threat perceptions here on these questions, including the struggle against Daesh, truly aligned? Second, are the motivations for military engagement truly exactly the same? And third, is there not a risk that recently established coalitions might fall apart if these differences in perception and/or motivation are openly exposed? I don't know whether anyone has thoughts on those 3 points, but I've got, in any case, 7 or 8 people already on my list. And because I was unfortunately unable to call on her in the last session, could I invite Nora Müller from Germany to take the floor first?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My question is to Dr. Al-Zayani. I find it striking that there hasn't been much talk about the role of the rising powers in Asia, especially China and India, in this region and in regional security. Now, I wanted to ask you to take a look into the crystal ball. If you had to envisage Gulf security 10 years from now, A, what would you see? And B, what role would you see for the rising Asian powers in this?
Thank you. From the UAE, Dr. Al-Badr Al-Shatari.
Thank you, John. My question is to the Secretary General of the GCC. دكتور زياني، سؤالي حول حل أو إزالة الخلافات بين دول مجلس التعاون، وأهنئك على النجاح الكبير، ولكن هناك من يشكك أن هذا النجاح قد يكون مؤقت وليس على مدى بعيد، حيث أن الدول لا تغير استراتيجياتها وسياساتها الخارجية في يوم وليلة. ولكن أود أن أسألك إذا كان هناك أي بوادر إيجابية من هذا الاتفاق عدا عن رجوع الدبلوماسيين إلى العواصم الخليجية، هل هو هذا الشيء الوحيد أو هناك بوادر أخرى يطمئن المواطنين الخليجيين أننا تعدينا هذه الأزمة بين الأشقاء الخليجيين؟ سؤالي الثاني، كان لمجلس التعاون الخليجي دور كبير في حل الأزمة اليمنية والعبور بها والتغيير السلمي إلى ما نحن عليه. الآن ما زالت اليمن تعيش أزمة كبيرة وأزمة عميقة، هل هناك مبادرة خليجية أخرى؟ وفي حال حصل الانقسام بين الشطرين الجنوبي والشمالي، ماذا سيكون موقف دول مجلس التعاون؟ وأنا أعلم جيدا أنك لعبت دور كبير في المسألة اليمنية، وشكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much. And could I invite Mohan Kumar of India?
Thank you very much, Dr. Chipman. My questions are about Daesh. And the first point I want to make is that until about June and the fall of Mosul in Iraq, we didn't hear much about Daesh. So I want to be provocative and say, did the strategic and intelligence community fail in predicting the rise of this monster? And if so, how can we prevent it in the future? Secondly, the one important doctrine in war is that you need to understand your enemy and I'm not sure we know enough about this beast. For example, we don't know the numbers. I mean, the numbers vary from 30,000 to something like 150,000. They're supposed to make $1 million a day on sale of oil illegally, etc. But do we know enough about whether this organization can sustain itself in terms of manpower and finance? And lastly, we know this is a breakaway movement from Al-Qaeda, but would it be too inconceivable to contemplate Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and Daesh getting together at least in terms of a broad central objective? Is it all that inconceivable, in which case it becomes, of course, a very serious, substantial global threat? Thank you.
Thank you. And from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Walid Abdul Khalid.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is to Mr. Baird and Fallon. I would like to understand from their perspectives, what's the root cause of extremism in our region? I believe we have our perception, but I would like to hear it from them, and what needs to be done to ensure that the future isn't full of fundamentalisms.
Thank you very much. And from the Islamic Republic of Iran, Hussein Musavian.
My question is to all panelists. They all discussed about collective approach, fighting ISIS. You all know that the main root causes of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, Taliban, is the type of school of thought, ideology, which has deep root in GCC countries. And what you have done and what is your collective measures to fight this ideology, other than the current strategy you have is just airstrike, 90% done by the US, and I really have not heard anything beyond. And the second root causes is the money and the weapon provided by many GCC countries to the Jabhat al-Nusra and many terrorist groups. Everyone knows, nobody is talking about this reality in this conference, but this is a fact. You can see thousands of articles in the Western media about these facts. And then about the role of Iran, Minister Baird, while you are spending your time in palaces and luxury hotels fighting ISIS, General Soleimani is at the front in the field, putting his life in his hand, fighting ISIS, when the most hostile country in the world, which is the US, has recognized the positive role of Iran fighting ISIS. John Kerry, just some days ago, officially appreciated the positive role of Iran. Why you are blaming even Iran when Iran is appreciated by the United States of America, which is far beyond you on hostility with Iran? And my last question is to Mr. Zayani. I have heard nothing about the new strategy by GCC in this conference engaging Iran. Everything I heard is old policies. Mr. Zayani discussed about collective security, and he mentioned that there is a need to engage with the most influential party. We are here about security in Persian Gulf, and everyone knows Iran is the most influential party in the Persian Gulf. What is your strategy other than 35 years strategy we have seen? I have not heard anything other than blaming Iran, accusing Iran on all the problems, and putting some preconditions.
Dr. Tim Huxley.
Thank you, John. My question is for Michael Fallon. Secretary of State, you mentioned in your address that the current global security situation is unprecedentedly dangerous. Does that mean that if your party is re-elected to government in May next year, there will be an unprecedented increase in resources for the British Armed Forces? Thank you.
We'll take one more in this round before coming back to the panel. Riyad Khawaji.
Thanks, John. In regards to threat perceptions, it's obviously there are differences I appreciate hearing from the Canadian Foreign Minister for being the first official in the Manama dialogue today to actually acknowledge the threat to sectarianism posed by the Iranian-backed Shiite militias in Iraq. Of course, we've seen from all the policies, even revealed through the letter sent by President Obama to Khamenei, offering cooperation on the nuclear file in return for cooperation in the fight against ISIS. So it's like using the war on ISIS as a bargaining chip more than just an actual strategy that can, or the same threat perception with the countries of the region. So obviously there are, each is coming to this fight for his own different perspective. They don't share the same strategy. This is being clear. I'd like to have a question to Secretary General Mr. Zayani about the Peninsula Shield Force. We have heard over the past few weeks announcements about the creation of a joint military command for the GCC, also a joint naval command. Can you please give us a bit more details on the progress and whether we're going to have the Peninsula Shield? Does it still exist, or are we seeing a new joint command, a new joint force in creation for the GCC? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will turn to the panel, give each about 2.5 minutes to answer the key questions posed to them. I'll start with John Baird, then Dr. Zayani, then Mr. Fallon. John Baird.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the comments and questions. I'll answer the ones with respect to Iran first, if I might. I want to say at the outset, I have huge respect for the Iranian people, for their history, for their culture. We want to see them play a major role in world affairs as a key partner and friend and ally, as I know every other country in the Gulf does and every other country in the world does. But we have real substantial concerns about Iran's government when it comes to, it was just mentioned, the Shia-backed militias in Iraq, its material support for terrorism in just about every single country in the region in some way, shape, or form. We are concerned about its human rights record. Not 2 months ago, a young Sunni woman was put to death for assaulting a man where she was merely trying to hold off an attacker who was trying to assault her, and she was put to death. We have huge concerns with Iran's nuclear program. We signed a nuclear cooperation agreement with the UAE recently. Here in the Gulf, in the center of the Arab world, the UAE is pursuing nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. It's following all of the international protocols and a leading responsible member of the international community. Whereas Iran's nuclear program, the number of centrifuges, the enrichment, in our judgment, is only for one purpose, to move that nuclear program at some point to a weapon program. I think the entire international community is concerned about that, given resolutions at the United Nations Security Council and given international efforts to try to get Iran to change course. If I could answer the question with respect to what is the root cause of extremism, whether it's in this region or whether it's at home in Canada, I would suspect I would be collecting the Nobel Peace Prize. But I do believe we have to collectively work as an international community to identify the root causes and to look at doing things differently to try to encourage people to take a different path and to try to nip this in its bud. I had the chance to visit just outside of Jeddah, and I'll be very brief, outside of Jeddah, to visit a de-radicalization center where the Saudi government works to take in often these young men and try to return them to their families. And they try to give them a more honest and accurate description and teachings of the true Islam. They try to deal psychologically with the challenges they might have, and they try to reintegrate them into their families. And that's certainly noble goals and a noble effort that we've all got to learn to expose. The other challenge is, of course, growing is the internet. I believe in a free internet, unregulated. I believe in free speech too, but no one has a right to scream fire in a crowded theater. So I think we need to look at what 21st century tools we could use to tackle a 21st century problem, particularly online. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Zayani? Peninsula Shield was one of the questions, remember?
If I can. Well, I think I'll start with the Far Eastern or the Asian rising power. China is a very important partner and a friend to the region. We have also a relationship with ASEAN and India, Japan. We all have strategic dialogue with them, whereby we are exchanging discussions, dialogue, in all areas, various areas, whether it is in political, economic, trade, education, people to people, including also consultation regarding security, etc. We understand the relationship. We're working on further deepening the already strong relationship that we have with these. We are seeing that the world is getting smaller. We believe in globalization. We fully implement it. China will always be, and India and others, Japan and ASEAN, will always be strategic partners to the GCC. Of course, in 10 years' time, their role and the relationship with them will only be stronger. Regarding if I speak in Arabic, because the question was in Arabic about الأزمة الخليجية. حقيقة تكلمت وبينت الأخ الفاضل أي علاقة دائما توجد فيها أوقات up and down. أي علاقة بين دول ممكن أن هي تكون فيها بعض الاختلافات، لكن نطمن الجميع بأن العلاقة قوية بين دول المجلس. احنا الحمد لله دول المجلس تعودت وبفضل حكمة قادتها وأيضا حرص شعوب دول المجلس على تضامن ولحمة دول المجلس، بأن احنا دائما نخرج من الأزمات أقوى. وأعتقد أن حتى في هذه الحالة احنا خرجنا أقوى، أكثر تضامن وأكثر تفاهم، وإن شاء الله حقيقة نتطلع إلى القمة القادمة. هي قمة فرحة بعد الانتهاء من اتفاق الرياض والالتزام باتفاق الرياض لكافة دول المجلس. فحقيقة أنا يمكن أغتنم هذه الفرصة أن أنا أتقدم بالشكر لقادة دول المجلس التعاون لحرصهم الدائم على وحدة وتضامن شعوب دول المجلس. فاضل أعتقد سألتني أيضا سؤال عن اليمن، وهل هناك مبادرة خليجية أخرى؟ حقيقة المبادرة موجودة، اللي هي المبادرة الأساسية. بنيت مخرجات الحوار الوطني، والحوار الوطني نفسه على آلية تنفيذ المبادرة الخليجية في اليمن. أيضا الاتفاق السلم والشراكة الوطنية اللي وقع بين كافة الأطراف، وأنا خطيت تحت كلمة كافة الأطراف، مبني على مخرجات الحوار الوطني ومبني على المبادرة الخليجية بما فيه الملحق الأمني. دول المجلس تدعم الشرعية، تدعم فخامة الرئيس عبد الرب هادي وقراراته وكافة الإجراءات التي يقوم بها ويتخذها، تدعم الحكومة الأخ بحاح. فيعني سياسة دول المجلس التعاون هي الالتزام بالحل السلمي والعودة إلى العمل السياسي في حل تلك الأزمة. The gentleman from Iran, he indicated that whether there are any actions taken regarding the financing of terrorism or extremism. I think just the very recent conference that we had here in Bahrain regarding the international effort in combating terrorism financing is just an indication to the gentleman who asked how serious this part is about supporting and taking actions and really controlling all the money and any donation if it is ongoing and actions are being taken. Laws are in place and they are being enforced. Whether we engage Iran, I think His Excellency the Sheikh Khalid today in his remarks indicated his wish to see the Iranian boats sailing beside the GCC and the American and the British and other, our friends and allies, vessels. Now, to have engagement, we need to build trust. We need to cooperate and we need to communicate. And there are opportunities for Iran to demonstrate its willingness by taking steps in dealing with the 3 islands being occupied by Iran, the UAE islands, taking action by pulling the Hezbollah from Syria and not supporting killing Syrians by Hezbollah terrorist organizations. I think aggressive steps taken by the party will show the willingness for engagement, and I think opportunities are there. Regarding the Peninsula Shield, Peninsula Shield will continue to be there. We are working, and the directives from the heads of states are to further develop the force. We are finalizing now the structure for a unified command that will have the land, the sea, the naval, and the air components all integrated in a unified command for the GCC. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. Just a few points remaining. I don't think we should be wholly surprised there are differences amongst the Gulf states. There are differences between the European allies and NATO members about the Afghanistan campaign. Each country has different constraints and can contribute in different ways. And I salute those Gulf countries that have been already able to participate in the coalition's strike action. On the speed of advance of the Daesh, I think it's fair to say everybody was caught out by that. I think intelligence is improving now and needs to improve. I think we certainly underestimated the attraction of this very curious and perverted ideology to the disenfranchised, and we need to work harder, as other speakers have said, in combating the conditions that lead to that attractiveness back in our own countries, in the schools and the colleges, amongst the Muslim communities themselves. Why does it thrive? Why does fundamentalism thrive, particularly in the Middle East? I think when people see prosperity benefiting some communities rather than others, when they see human rights not being properly respected, when they're unable to get rid of a dictatorship or a government they don't like, of course these are the conditions that may drive some to more fundamental and radical solutions. On Iran, I don't want to add much more. I don't blame Iran. I think what's important about this particular situation is that all the regional partners, all of them, Iran, the Gulf countries, Turkey and others, all have to be part of the international action to uphold the integrity of Iraq and to ensure that the Daesh does not triumph. There was a question about leaving the campaign to airstrikes. We are not leaving the campaign to airstrikes alone. And if you go to Baghdad or Erbil, you will see how the new government of Iraq is already reforming the Iraqi army, is already planning to recruit a National Guard to hold the ground that is liberated, and obviously will need help in equipment and training that some 50 nations are gathering together to provide. So I wholly accept this is not something that can be won simply by air power, but as I said when I spoke, it has to be led on the ground by a homegrown army that has the full support of all parts of Iraq, cutting across the various political and tribal and religious divisions. So far as their funding is concerned, yes, the questioner is right. We do have to tighten the noose on the funding of the Daesh, and there is work going on in the international financial centres to follow the money, to track that funding down, and to cut off its source of its supply at source. Finally, there was a question about my own defence spending in Britain. I'm happy to tell you my defence budget is secure next year. It's secure right through till the end of March 2016, and we are already fulfilling the commitment we made at NATO to be spending 2% of our GDP and 20% of our defence spending on equipment. We are meeting that target at the moment, and it is, of course, for other countries to follow through the commitments that they've made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to end in 15 minutes, so I'm going to take 4 or 5 more comments from the floor and then invite each of the speakers to leave this long day's deliberations with one final thought from each of them. That doesn't mean that they'll ignore your questions, but it means that they should wrap up your comments into a final thought from their perspectives. 2 prefatory comments before I bring everybody in. There was a lot of discussion about Asian powers and the role in the Gulf. The IISS has published for this event an Adelphi e-book that has an extensive chapter on the emerging role of Asian powers in the Gulf, and we have very much the intention at the 2015 Manama Dialogue to ensure that 6 or 7 Asian powers are fully represented here at the National Security Advisor, Defense Minister or Foreign Minister level. The second prefatory comment I want to make is that in this Sky Arabian News debate on Friday night, Hosha Zebari, the finance minister of Iraq, made the provocative statement that if things keep on going in the direction in which they're going, we could be faced not just with a few failed states, but with a failed region. And I think that question was also posed by one of our German interlocutors here, so I wouldn't want the panelists to evade the challenge of answering the question, how can we avoid this becoming not just a series of potentially failed states, but a failed region? And this is a question posed by someone from the region, the finance minister of Iraq. Zayed Belbadji.
Good evening. Thank you for your comments. I'd like to start this by framing my understanding of Gulf security with an old Arab proverb, which is, my brother and I against my cousin and I against a stranger. There was mention of Kuwait circa 1991, and I would like to ask whether, given Western hesitance to put boots on the ground and Western hesitance elsewhere, is there really appetite to intervene on the scale of 1991 in Kuwait? And if not, should the GCC really start looking elsewhere on relationships with the Gulf, with the China? Could there be a day when the US packs its bags and goes home? Thank you.
Dana Allen.
Thank you, John. Like my colleague Tim Huxley, I was struck by Secretary Fallon's describing the world, if I understood him correctly, as dangerous to an unprecedented degree. And I just wonder if you can mean that literally, and whether we need to be a little bit careful about creating a climate of panic and fear among societies. I mean, just to pick up on three of the threats that you mentioned, Daesh is an odious, murderous organization, but it can't really be more powerful than all the countries in the region and around the world who oppose it, including, as has been mentioned in this session, the Islamic Republic of Iran. Russia is breaking a lot of rules, but it is far weaker than the Western countries that it's challenging. And I think you also mentioned Ebola, which is a nasty disease, but it's hard for me to see how it's related to these other things.
Thank you. Dr. Sultan Al-Nuaimi.
Thank you. سؤال الأستاذ عبد اللطيف الزياني. أشرت إلى أن هناك دول اتخذت القرارات غير المناسبة. السؤال هنا من يحدد أنه قرار مناسب أو غير مناسب؟ السيد موسويان أشار إلى أن دول الخليج دعمت جبهة النصرة وغيره. الجلسة التي فاتت أشار إلى أن التنظيمات الوحيدة القادرة على مواجهة داعش هي حزب الله والتنظيمات الشيعية، وكأنه يريد أن يضفي شرعية لوجود هذه التنظيمات في سوريا. فمن يتخذ إذا كانت القرارات غير مناسبة بناء على ماذا؟ ما هي المعايير التي تتخذ لوجود في نهاية المطاف تنظيم أو وجود نقول أن هناك اتفاق شامل ما بين الدول ككل لوجود أو ترتيبات أمنية متفق عليها؟ شكرا.
Thank you. Dr. Yusuf Mashal from Bahrain.
Thank you, sir. دكتور عبد اللطيف، تقارير كثيرة جيوسياسية تقر أن انضمام إيران والعراق إلى مجلس التعاون سيعزز نتائج إيجابية لكل من إيران ودول مجلس التعاون، خاصة على الصعيد الأمني والاقتصادي. الكل يؤمن وحسب ما سمعنا اليوم أنه من الطبيعي أن يصاحب انضمام إيران والعراق إلى مجلس التعاون الكثير من الفائدة، كون إيران أصبحت دولة لا يستهان بها سواء كان في المنطقة أو في العالم. ألا تظن أن الوضع أصبح مهيأ لكي تصبح إيران والعراق عضوين في مجلس التعاون؟ ومن جهتكم هل تجدون انضمام إيران والعراق إلى مجلس التعاون يمكن أن يعزز نتائج إيجابية أمنية اقتصادية لدول مجلس التعاون بغض النظر ماذا أو كيف سينظر له الغرب؟ شكرا.
Thank you. Jamal Khashoggi from Saudi Arabia.
Right. Mr. Baird, I like what you said, that polarism is an antidote to sectarianism. It's also an antidote to radicalism. That's what we are about to suffer more from, because after the failure of Arab Spring in certain countries, some of us resorted to exclusions, to exclusion. This policy will lead to more trouble, and we need to put some emphasis on the policies of exclusions which are becoming more popular in the Arab world or some part of the Arab world, because that would lead to more trouble in the Arab world, as if we need more trouble. The last thing I would like to say, I like if you can switch places with John Kerry about your comments with Iran. You are doing the right thing, the right approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ben Barry.
Thank you, John. You asked about alignment and misalignment of aims. It seems to me that the Daesh campaign has this. At the moment, the aims of Iran and the US-led coalition are aligned in evicting Daesh from Iraq. But when, as the US intend, the main effort switches to the defeat of Daesh in Syria, then the US coalition and Iran's aims as they stand are diametrically opposed. And this would carry with it considerable political and military risk. I would like to ask the speakers if they agree with this analysis, and if they do, what should be done about it?
Thank you. And finally, from Australia, Neil Hawkins.
Thank you. I just want to point out that Australia is involved in the fight against Daesh. We have 600 troops in the area. We have 200 special forces on the ground, $140 million in Syria to aid refugees, and in Iraq as well. My question is to the Secretary of State and also to the Foreign Minister Baird. How important is it for your constituents back home that the Gulf states themselves remain militarily involved in operations?
Thank you very much. There are a number of people still on the list, but I do want to bring this to a close in 6 minutes. So what I'd like to do is invite each of the panelists, as I advertised before, to pick up one or two of the direct points made to them, but also wrap up with a single thought with which they might be able to leave the audience. And perhaps I will move slowly from my left to my right and begin with Michael Fallon, then John Baird, and then with Dr. Zayani promptly at 6:45. Michael Fallon.
Well, let me just pick up two of the points. First, is this going to be or require the scale of the international effort that helped to liberate Kuwait? Yes, almost certainly, and it is. There are over 50 countries now involved in the fight against the Daesh, as I said, all helping in different ways. But it needs to be of that scale, and I think increasingly it is of that scale. And yes, in response to the final point, it certainly assists us in getting public support behind what we're doing to be able to point to what is being done in the region itself, particularly by the Gulf states. And it was very, very important that those Gulf states were involved in the airstrike, the first airstrikes back in the autumn. The second point I will pick up only is the suggestion that I was wrong to say that we weren't living in unprecedentedly dangerous times. Let's just be clear. We've had soldiers murdered on the streets of Ottawa and London. We've had our hostages beheaded. We've had our own citizens shot down in an airliner by Russian-backed separatists. If you don't think that's a pretty dangerous state of affairs, then I have to disagree with you. And the three threats I mentioned do all have international developments. Ebola is something that crosses borders. It is going to require a huge military effort and international cooperation, and a military effort already being led by the United Kingdom, by France, and the United States in the three countries most affected, and we're already seeing cases breaking out in the United States and in Spain. The rest of the world is vulnerable. So far as the Daesh is concerned, I don't think we need to, in this audience, re-emphasize the nature of this threat, but it is a threat to the rest of us in the West. When Norway has some 60 jihadists, when New Zealand has 40, when we in Britain have some 500 who have gone to fight and may return to threaten the way of life that we've enjoyed, yes, there is a threat. And when Russia conforms to a previous pattern, given its interference in Ossetia, its annexation of Crimea, the support it's giving to separatism in Ukraine, and the kind of threats and aggression we have seen against the Baltic states most recently, yes, there is a threat there as well. So let me just finish and try and answer the question that John posed to us. I have never known a year when I've seen so many reports and analyses that suggest that a state is failing or potentially about to fail. I can't remember a time like this when we face the prospect of whole states beginning to dissolve in front of our eyes. So we do have to meet that challenge. We do have to be aligned in doing it. We do have to bring our different motivations together to ensure that the legitimate governments of these states do get the support that they deserve, and that one state collapsing does not help to concertina the rest of the region.
Thank you very much indeed. John Baird.
I'll go through a power round of comments to respond. One, my Saudi friend talked about the politics of exclusion. I couldn't agree more. That is a powerful problem. Two, with respect to the P5+1 discussions, I can tell you when I heard reports that Prince Saud was seen in Vienna, or his plane was spotted on the runway at the Vienna airport recently, when at the end of the last round of discussions, that made me feel a lot better about the substance of those discussions. Third, I'd be very happy to for Iran to help rid Iraq of Daesh. I then hope we could look at perhaps in Syria, getting Syria rid of Iran with its material support for Hezbollah and for Assad's war against his own people. With respect to the comments that have been made about boots on the ground and do we have what it takes to meet this challenge, would we have a Kuwait-type effort? The shadow of Iraq II is a very heavy one in the West, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, even in Canada when we didn't participate. But I think you have to look at if we don't have American leadership, we don't have leadership. And I think we've all got to give credit to the United States for stepping up in this fight against Daesh and bringing together a very strong coalition. The comment about does it matter if there's Arab involvement in this? You bet it is. When we had a key debate in our parliament and a key debate in Canadian society, when I could say our friends and allies in the Arab world, Jordan, Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, we're all participating, that we could have a base in Kuwait, that makes a huge difference in the West, and it's important. We have a problem in the West where people want immediate gratification. Well, in 6 months, will this be all over and will we have delivered a complete success? Well, under those standards, we never would have been able to fight communism or fascism in World War II or beyond. So we've also got to be realistic with our Western sensibilities. In Russia, I agree with the comment. It is far weaker than we think. I mean, we were recently at a NATO meeting with EU representatives. The GDP of NATO countries in the EU is almost 50% of the GDP in the world. It dwarfs the Russian Federation. And we must continue to be very strong, particularly on economic sanctions in the absence of any kinetic action. And finally, what is the great, important, crucial thing coming out of this? I think it's we must recognize the neo-fascist theology and the violence that employs requires a global response. And we have a saying we sometimes use in Canada, I sometimes use, at some point you've got to stop fighting fires and you've got to start taking the matches away. And that is the ideology. Thank you.
Dr. Zayani.
Thank you, John. I'd like to say that GCC is really a source of stability in this vital region at such a very critical time. GCC states are really committed to play their part in ensuring to maintain its role in achieving and maintaining the stability in the region. We believe in resolving conflicts through peaceful manners. We believe in resolving conflicts through dialogue. And we exercise that as a fundamental foreign policy principles. We believe in not interfering in other countries' business, and we don't allow others to interfere in our own business. We fully believe in cooperation, and we extend our hands to cooperate with any player that would like to be a part in achieving stability and maintaining prosperity in this region. Cooperation, we believe in. Cooperation is part of our title. But cooperation depends, to achieve it, it depends on trust. Trust, there are opportunities for any player who would like to take up the role to seize those opportunities which we talked about and show the credibility of really playing the positive role. We have also trust really is, I think, a critical component of the collective approach that we are trying to achieve in really facing and working with such a complex issue. We need to work together, we need to trust each other, and we need to cooperate collectively in a comprehensive manner. Thank you, sir.
Dr. General Zayani, thank you very much. John Baird, Michael Fallon, thank you very much. Two concluding points. The first is just to leave you with a provocation. I think one of the questions that was left unanswered was the question of the root causes to the problems of terrorism here. And I think it's the job of intellectuals and academics often to think about root causes, but I do wonder whether this call to examine the root causes is occasionally too frequently made. And I wonder sometimes whether we are making the analytically perfect the enemy of the practically necessary. And so long as we understand the proximate causes of many of these issues, we can probably, in many cases, solve the issues. And so long as we look too deeply for the root causes, we might sometimes evade the challenges of the day or the decade, or find a way of excusing activity that is inexcusable because we have found some intellectually coherent root cause that might, in some universe of thought, justify that activity. So I would invite people to reflect as to whether often enough it's good enough to identify the proximate causes of some of these difficulties and address those with vigor, enthusiasm, clarity, fairness, and good governance. And if one does that, one perhaps has done enough to help stabilize this very complex world in which we live. Let me secondly end by thanking not only all of the speakers on this panel, but all throughout the day, and very warmly all of you for having engaged in debate in such a civilized and reasoned manner. I think the IISS prides itself on promoting simultaneously reasoned debate and intellectual provocation, and we've done that in a finely attuned balance, I think, during the course of the day. You're all now liberated to enjoy your various dinners for the evening, and invite you, those of you who can, to reconvene tomorrow for 4 simultaneous sessions at 9:30. But please thank the panelists and yourselves. Thank you.